And welcome to Racing Rundown. This is the final time in 2022 that I will be joined here on this wonderful program by a friend of mine at WRHU. We made a couple of stuff with this, and coming into next year, that's going to be a more regular segment here. We'll have some fun thoughts on races from WRHU people, but to be joined for the last time in this year, we'll be joined by the original who was on the Breeders' Cup episode first before everybody else showed up. So, Ronnie, you're back on here. We're ready to talk horses, and we're going to especially talk them without the G.
Talking without the G, of course. Absolutely.
All right, so we're recording this on Monday the 19th, so we're going to talk about some races at the fairgrounds the day after Christmas. Of course, the day after Christmas is highlighted by the Santa Anita meet, but unfortunately we don't have those entries yet. There's not really a whole lot I can do about that, so instead we're going to go down to New Orleans and talk about what is a good card of races overall put together. Definitely not the higher level of competition that you'll see out in California, but still some good races, and especially given that these are, that this is the beginning of the series of races at the fairgrounds over the course of the winter. These are certainly important races to pay attention to, because these are the horses that you'll be looking at come January, come February, come March, and hopefully will make us some money over the course of that time. Episode 190 is going to be out later this week. We're going to do everything that we talk about here. I actually don't have picks for most of these races, so I'm just going to kind of talk through and give general thoughts that I have before I have my official picks in, and then we'll obviously have everything all set to go for later on this week. We will have 2 more episodes before the end of the year, this week's episode and then the following week's episode, where we'll recap everything that goes on this weekend. So with that being said, we'll move on to race number 3 down at the fairgrounds. We're going 1 mile and 70 yards in this one, and it's for the fillies and mares. Already said going 1 mile and 70 yards. And Ronnie's got some strong feelings about one particular mare, or actually filly in this race, losing track of how old this one is. So I'll give you the floor now.
All right. I'm gonna have to go with number 1, Moonswag. Opened up the entries here, and that name immediately jumped out at me. So I had to take a look into her. And from her results, last time she ran a grade 3 race, that was 11:24, just shy of a month, finished 4th. I mean, the numbers there, it's not a bad finish, but if you look back, to just take a step back, 10:28 and 10:1, finished first and third respectively. Granted, these weren't graded races, but it seems like she's on the up and up, and to finish 4th at a grade 3 is not bad. Maybe we see her come out, later this year, get up there, but I like Moonswag. I'm liking my chances.
Yeah, and Moonswag has been one that's been running in these regional stakes races throughout the 2 years, the 2 years since she's become a 2-year-old. Has some experience at the fairgrounds, 3rd in the Silver Bullet Day and the Rachel Alexander going back to last year. So some good success for Moonswag at this level. As I said, this is one of the races that I'm not settled on. Just purely looking at the odds perspective, Moonswag right now, second choice on the morning line, would expect that to probably be between or the odds to narrow up between her and Charlie's Penny. But probably you'll get a fair price on her. I think well worth a look in here. And honestly, with a short field, I won't be surprised if come Wednesday when we have this episode out, I will be on Moonswag as well in this race. But won't not to be the insult to you. Won't be because of the name. It'll be because of other things that I see. But definitely, it's just appropriate that Moonswag is the first place to go in here for you. We'll move on now to the Sugar Bowl, not the football game, the 6 furlong race for 2-year-olds at the fairgrounds. This one, most of the horses that are on this fairgrounds card have worked their way into Racing Rundown at some point this year. I don't believe we've had any of these horses on either Maiden Watch, and I don't remember specifically going with any of them in particular races, but Brad Cox is here with a pair of horses, as he always is at the fairgrounds. Very, very notable at this meet, Distorted Pro and Corona Bolt. Ronnie, I'll go to you now. What are your thoughts on this race?
I'm favoring Todd Sharrow here, from coming out of Florida. I'm really liking their record here. Looking at it, from my perspective, no graded races here, but finishing 3rd, 2nd, and 3rd in the last 3 races, and the most recent coming on December 3rd. So pretty recent, just a couple weeks out, but finished 3rd. So I'm liking the record here. It seems that running pretty consistent. So I'm gonna stick with Todd Sharrow.
Yeah, Todd Sharrow. I think it's, if I'm counting right, 4 stakes placings in his career and has not missed the board in races that are not run at Kentucky Downs. And you can always throw out things that happen at Kentucky Downs, given that it's just kind of a sink or float track, whether or not horses will get over that. This is a 2-year-old, or late 2-year-old, if you want to look at it, early 3-year-old, 6 furlong race. So very wide open. There's, from my perspective, there's a lot of ways that I think I'll have to look to go in. I'm far from decided on this race. This is another one where I don't really have an idea of where I'm going to go here, but Todd Sherrow certainly makes a lot of sense given the consistency that Ronnie mentioned that he's shown up to this point. We'll move on now to the Blushing KD, a mile and a 16th for the fillies and mares going long on the turf, and these races were the bane of our existence on this podcast last winter at the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds did not leave us with a lot of pleasant memories in 2022. So hopefully when we get on this to Racing Rundown, we'll start off a good way, end off 2023, end off 2022 on a halfway decent note, and put in a good first step into 2023 at the fairgrounds. But we'll go to Ronnie now for your thoughts on this race.
Now, looking at this one, I really don't know where to go here. Of course, Island Highway's at the top, but Island Highway hasn't run for about 2 months tomorrow. Granted, the last race was a first place finish, but it's quite some time. It's quite some time for a horse there not running. I really don't know where to go here. I was looking Wave of Goodness and Olivia of the Desert, but they're not really sticking out to me record-wise or consistency-wise. So I think out of just a lack of knowledge out of this race, I'm going to go with Island Highway. Granted, it's been a while since they've run, but the last one was a first place finish, so I'm gonna take my chances with Island Highway.
I was actually looking at Island Highway before that we were getting into this race. The layoff certainly isn't my favorite thing to go with. I'm constantly talking about how I don't want to go with horses off of breaks, but these are a lot of very inconsistent turf mares, which you get at this kind of level. A lot of horses that are not running consistently, and you just have to deal with that. And this is the kind of race where I can just look at it right now and tell I'm not going to truly love whoever I go with in this race, but ultimately there's not really going to be a whole lot that I can do about that. We'll move on now to race number 8, which is the next stakes race for the 2-year-old fillies. This one does have a few horses that we've gone with, most notably Promise of Hope, who was entered and ran in the Adirondack at Saratoga. Unfortunately did not run there. Her 2 stakes efforts, second time in stakes competition was in the Jessamine. Probably not her preferred surface, but still left a lot to be desired there. But I will kind of echo the same points that I made about this race, that I made about the Colts edition to this race with the fillies. Late 2-year-old, if you want to look at it this way, early 3-year-old race at this kind of level with a lot of horses that still have a lot left to prove, a lot of, maybe potential upside, but still not a lot to draw from these horses there. So once again, this will be one that will be very difficult to go with, and I'll be spending quite a bit of time on over the next couple of days. Your thoughts?
I'm a little torn here. I'm between Twice as Sweet, which about a month ago, granted not a graded race, Smart Halo Stakes, black type, finished first. It was a good race, but again, it's been a month. Then Dazzling Blue jumped out at me. Love the name. Looking at the record, seems pretty, I would say, consistent, but there's a small sample size. There's only one race here. Granted, again, it's just about a month ago, and they finished first. So I'm a little torn between those two. They both have pretty small sample sizes here, so we don't really know how consistent these horses are. But if I had to pick one, I think I'm going to have to go with Twice as Sweet just because there's more of a record there that you can take a look at.
Now we'll move on to the Shearer Memorial, and this is one where looking at this gives me a flashback to our old friend Miles Ahead. Eric and I on that, whatever you want to call that card. There are several random black types at Churchill Downs in September, the weekend that they ran the Woodbine Mile, just for context of times. And Miles Ahead took out the Louisville Thoroughbred Society after a 2-month break between that and a second place effort in the Kelly's Landing behind the 2021 Breeders' Cup Sprint winner Aloha Weston there. And Miles Ahead has been very consistent throughout his career, but a big thing with him is he's a Churchill Downs goer. But at the same time, there's not really a lot of reasons to dislike Miles Ahead at this point, given that He is coming off a slight break, but at the same time, the break wasn't a problem going into the Kelly's Landing, going from the Kelly's Landing into the Louisville Thoroughbred Society. So back-to-back good efforts for Miles Ahead. You go back to his trip out to California, which was definitely a mistake. You have obviously the success that he turned into Gulfstream, including 2 stakes wins, the Gulfstream Sprint in 2022. Going back to 2021, he won the Smile Invitational. So good success for Miles Ahead in his career. I imagine that there's a good chance Eric might go back with him, as probably will I. I'll just say right now, Miles Ahead's going to be my pick in this race.
For me, I'm liking Surveillance. It's been running for quite some time. It's been running since 2019, and everything here has been the lowest. The lowest, I would say, 5th place. Everything pretty consistent between 1 and 5. Granted, there is an 8th in there, but that was in 2021, so it's been a while. And the last graded race that this horse ran, was in April 9th actually. A grade 3 finished 4th. So it seems like they're pretty comfortable there. And on top of that, we share a birthday, April 5th. So that, it's just the cherry on top. So I'm gonna have to go with Surveillance here.
Got to go with Surveillance for the culture in this race.
Absolutely.
And now we'll move on to race number 10, the Buddy Dilberto. This race, I'm going to go to a horse that I never liked to pick, and I've lost so much money on over the course of however the hell many years that this guy's been running. But that's Spooky Channel. Last 2 races have just been successes for him. He won the Sycamore at Keeneland in 2021, which is crazy to think that this horse has not raced in such a long time, and I am normally absolutely allergic to the layoff. But at the same time, no one else that I really want to go with here in this race. So we're going to chuck it up, hope that it goes better than it has in the past. But Spooky Channel in this race, again, couple of stakes wins, yeah. Again, we're talking about a horse who had a graded stakes win in January of 2021, which we're pushing 2 years on that. But he won the Sycamore at Keeneland, as I mentioned, and overall, not a great body of work that this guy brings to the table, but at the same time, there's not really a whole lot that you can draw on from really anybody else in this race. So layoff, not great, but at the same time, there's not really a better option, so I'm going to go with Spooky Channel in this race.
Yeah, I'm going to have to echo you that on Spooky Channel, and for pretty much the same reason, just a lack of knowledge, and there really isn't too much to base anybody else off of. So I feel like you just got to go with the tried and true Spooky Channel, despite being off the game a little bit. Spooky Channel is the clear favorite, at least for me, to choose here.
And now we're going to move on to the Gun Runner, which is the first of 2 Kentucky Derby, the Kentucky Derby / Oaks points prep races on this card. And this race features a few horses that I'm very interested in. Number 6 in this race is Raise Cane. I had him in the Bowman Mill. I actually think, Ronnie, that was one of the horses that you picked for me. When I was during my break was Raise Cane. He was 3rd in the Bowman Mill last time out after a maiden breaking effort at Keeneland. But Determinedly is who I think I'm going to end up settling on here. Only 6 races, but a lot of that, 6 starts with only 1 win, but a lot of those are lost in turf races, and obviously not going to be running on turf in this race. And the 2 races that I really care about are the last 2. At Keeneland, ran 2nd behind Arabian Night. He was not going to beat Arabian Night on that day. Arabian Night was much the best. And then last time out at Churchill, going 7 furlongs, took that race out to finally break his maiden in a very good fashion. It's a decent price right now on the morning line, but I imagine that there's a chance that he will likely be favored here. But I could see the money really going anywhere in this race. But Determinedly is who I'm going to eventually end up settling with in this race.
I'm liking the look of And the Winner Is here. Granted, the last first grade race that they ran about just shy of a month ago, again, pretty recent, they finished 7th. So grade 1, obviously the heat is a little bit too much for this horse. But if we go back down to grade 2, grade 3, we're looking at a first place finish and a third place finish respectively. So obviously more comfortable in that range of competition, but those were quite a few months ago. So I don't really necessarily think that this is the best pick that you can go with, but it's one I'm quite comfortable on given the fact that we really don't know what type of competition they're running in this one. So I would think, given the fact that grade 2, grade 3, they're a lot more comfortable. Grade 1 being a whole different animal, of course. That this is the horse I'm comfortable with.
Now we're going to move on to race number 12. We got 2 more tear your hair out races to end off this card. The Untappable is the filly iteration of the Gun Runner. And in this race, I am going to have to spend a lot more time on this. Just in the little looking at this before we came into the studio to do this, I didn't really get a whole lot of chances to look at this race. So I really have no looks here in this point, just based off of the brief little chances that I got to look here in this race. I'll have a lot more to say on this coming to the when we get into the podcast. Pretty Mischievous is the logical safe choice in here, given she was third, beaten by Hoosier Filly last time out in her graded stakes debut. Not a whole lot that she could have done about that, a neck away from finishing second in there. So she's going to get a fair amount of backing in here, rightfully so, but I don't think that that this race is an open and shut case of Pretty Mischievous. I think that, with a early 2-year-old, late 2-year-old filly, early 3-year-old filly type of race, I think it's well worth taking the extra time. So I'm going to do that, even though initial look, and this isn't very original or anything, I'm aware of that, but initial look, Pretty Mischievous is probably going to turn in another A effort in this race.
For me, I'm going to go Cotton Candy Annie here. One, the name jumps out at me. It's a cute name, but consistency is the name of the game for me right here. We have a first-place finish and another first-place finish, both in the month of November. Granted, now we're in the month of December. It's been a little bit, but to me, 2 first-place finishes in the same month, just a couple weeks apart. I like the look of that. I'm liking the look of the last 3 races, first, third, respectively. It looks like he's on the up and up, and I like the look of the record. So Cotton Candy Annie is definitely the pick for me.
And now we're going to move on to the final race, the Tenacious, and this might as well be renamed the horses that have burned Racing Rundown's money on however many occasions that they've had. There's so many horses in this race that we have lost, and I'm sure you, the listener, have lost money on throughout the course of their careers. Horses like Forza D'Oro burning money. Mr. Wireless burned our money last time, or a couple times ago, when he ran in the Fort Larned at Churchill. Farmington Road, Chess Chief, Happy American, all these horses that love to burn money. So that's obviously having a little bit of fun with this before we get serious with it. But a lot of different ways you can go here. Again, there are some horses that are taking the step down from graded stakes or from Grade 1 competition in the past. Main one that I'm referencing with that is Forza D'Oro, a couple of Grade 1 efforts in 2021, drops down, only has 1 race this year, but again, given that this field is rather inconsistent and unpredictable, Forza D'Oro I don't think is a terrible bounce-back candidate in the Brad Cox barn now. At this point in his career, Farmington Road won last time out. General consensus would be with him is that I would think that he would want longer, but at the same time, this horse is so random that I can't write anything out with him. Happy American is another one that I know wants longer. I liked him last year in this race. He did not hit the board. He ran second in the Tenacious. And actually, I have to correct myself. Eric liked him in this race last year. I liked him in the Mine Shaft, where he did not hit the board. But he ran second in this race last year. And then you have your usual stalwart in Chess Chief, Mr. Wireless, as I already referenced. So plenty of different ways you can go. This is a race where you might have to just realize that you're probably not going to have the winner and just deal with whatever frustration comes from that. But overall, a fun race, and once again, this will be a setup for what these fairgrounds handicap races will look like over the course of the winter. We'll see what Ronnie has to say about this race.
For me, I'm going to go with Intrepid Heart here. Now, you bring up Forza D'Oro, I was taking a look into them as well. And granted, there's a lot more graded competition there. The resume is a little bit longer and it holds a little bit more weight, but you see the steady drop off. Some, like you said, some grade 1 efforts there, and he falls middle of the pack, maybe podium finish. And the greatest day of the competition is there. But for me, Intrepid Heart sticks out because, granted, he's a little older, but the consistency in this year alone has been big. Second place finishes for the past, what looked to be...
It's the past 7 races.
Past seven races, yeah, there we go. So, I mean, granted, getting up there in age, but still running quite well. So, Intrepid Heart is the pick for me.
Yeah, and Intrepid Heart is a horse who ran in a Belmont Stakes in 2019, dropped to the claiming ranks, has worked his way back up to allowance, and then even worked in a couple of black-type placings. So should he get the job done here, it would be very, very cool to see a horse who was obviously at a very high competition level drop down and slowly started to work back up. Obviously never going to reach that top level, but this is a horse that will likely see more, or that should he have some success here, we'll likely see him throughout the course of the winter in these fairgrounds races. And with that being said, that's going to be it for I don't know that this will be the last thing that we'll have on YouTube for Racing Rundown in 2021, but it's definitely going to be the last time that I have non-Eric people joining me on the podcast. So appreciate you for now the third time coming on Racing Rundown, Ronnie, and we'll have we're already planning on having something for the Pegasus in January, so we're going to see who ends up joining us for that, but I imagine that that's going to be fun, very competitive atmosphere, because I know that the Zia Park episode was very competitive, and that was for stuff at Zia Park. So when we got major implications at Gulfstream, it's going to be fun to do. So we'll see you next time on that. And Ronnie, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.